Chapati. Okay, good. What did you like? The salad. I like the salad too. That was very nice. I like the soup. But the soup was also very nice. Butternut soup. I enjoyed that. Okay, enough of that. Do we have a representative from Tanzania here? Oh, she's right at the back there. So the lady would like to talk to you. Hook up. Wave, yes, wave at each other. Okay, good. Super duper. You look at for each other later. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I would like now to go to the next panel. And the next panel is engagement with the media and stakeholders in the audiovisual and cinema industry. It's going to be led by none other than a great filmmaker from Ghana. She is a audiovisual and cinema specialist. She is a filmmaker in her own right, all the way from Accra, Ghana. In fact, Accra is like a sister city to Nairobi. We love Ghana very much. She is Madame Akofa Ajayani. Am I right? Ajayani. You tell me how to say it properly, right? I'll give you this microphone. Please give a good round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Like you ate lunch. Okay.
Yes, it's Akofa Ajayani.
Ajayani.
That's right. A very good afternoon to all of you. Welcome back from lunch. I'm going to stand on all protocols already, so please forgive me if I'm not doing the whole dignitary thing. Thank you. I want to say a very big thank you to the organizers for this opportunity. And I want to thank all the media for all the work that you're doing. And for all of us, the stakeholders who are here, those who are working behind the scene, I think that we are all doing a marvelous job. We should give yourselves a round of applause. Now, this afternoon, we are talking about, forgive me, I broke my glasses this morning. So we are talking about yes, the 3 thematic areas to present the statues of the AU, the AACC. Yes, thank you for that. I'm going to have to strain my eyes a lot. And the plan of action on the cultural creative industries. And so I have 6 powerful panelists, 6 powerful people who are going to come up here for us to go through this. And I'm going to go straight away in mentioning their names, and I hope that I get their names right. Forgive me if I don't. A minute, just a minute, please. Okay. Okay, so my first person I'm calling up here is Dr. Vicentia Shule. Hope I got it right. Please give him a round of applause. He's the Senior Culture Officer of the AACC. And then we have Professor Emmanuel Dandara. Thank you very much, Professor Emmanuel Dandara, who is the chairperson of the working group. The chairperson of the working group for, oh my goodness, for the revision of the AU and plan of action on cultural and creative industries. And my favorite person, Mrs. Jane Muneni, is also a member of the CCI's working group. Please keep the applause coming. We have Mrs. Aita Wangusa. Did I get it right? She's also a member of the CCI working group. Mr. Jacob Nyangila. Please give him a round of applause. And last but not the least, we have Mr. Timra Gundwe. Timra Gundwe. Thank you so much. Thank you, your seat is here. Now I want to welcome all of you to this section. So, I think that this particular section for me, I think is the most important of the whole 2 days that we are here. I think it's very crucial because we need to know the plan of action. We need to know what the statute is all about, what is written there, and why we are here. What is it that is going to govern the AACC, and why it was even formed in the first place. So even before I asked Dr. Manuel to go, before I asked the citizenship to go straight into the presentation, let me ask you, Mrs. Jane, Auntie Jane, I call you Auntie Jane all the time. What I know how involved you've been in making sure that the AACC has come to stay or come to be implemented. Can you tell us a little bit about the road so far, what is taken for it to be where it is now, and few key highlights that we are supposed to expect from the presentation? Yes, I want her to start.
Hello. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Akofa. When we talk about the AACC, I think it's important to go back to the decision that was made in 2003 when the decision was made to establish the African Audiovisual and Cinema Commission and an African Film Fund. And certain things were supposed to be done, and one of them was to do a report, a feasibility study on the state of the film industry in Africa, in AU member states, and that was done. The other thing was, of course, to draft the statutes. And this, a lot of this was done at the Nairobi Secretariat of the Pan-African Federation of Filmmakers, while working very closely with the government of Kenya and the African Union Commission. So I was very involved in the drafting. I was part of the drafters of the statutes. And one of the things that I think stands out for me in this statute is that we entrenched the filmmaker within the statute, in the sense that the filmmakers would still have a say in how the AACC is being run, because what we've experienced, and the reason that we kind of suggested this and put our foot down about having the filmmaker as part of this, we've seen many institutions that filmmakers have said they want, they are established, and then it becomes political. And the the stakeholders who actually wanted this institution to work for them are sidelined. So for me, I think what stands out in this statute is that the filmmaker was given a lot of leeway. I would say that, and we thank the member states that we were working with, because they actually understood our position and put us as part of being able to contribute to the running of the AACC. So for me, ACOFA, that's what stands out. And that's why I said this morning at some point, if AACC fails, it is the filmmakers who will have failed themselves. Because we are also good at establishing and creating institutions, then we leave them to others. If we do that, I'm sorry to say this may not see the light of day. And I think I'll expound more on that when we get more into the discussion, because operationalizing the temporary secretariat, the word here is temporary. Why is it temporary? It's because we have to get 15 member states to sign the statutes. So if the filmmakers don't play their role in their countries to lobby their governments to sign the statutes, it means that the AACC can stay for another 10, 20 years before it starts to work. So there was a reason we entrenched ourselves, and it is for that reason that I think we also need to take this job to our own countries and start lobbying for the temporary secretariat to start working. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let me just ask, how many of us here have seen or read the statute? Anyone? Okay. Just one. Okay, so that's why it's very important that we all know what it says, and so that we can do and make sure that we have a vibrant AACC coming. From the things that we've said from this morning, we all agree that using film as a tool, as an engineering tool for storytelling in cinematic expressions, will give us a fearless, a credible new African, devoid of corruption, who is self-reliant. We should own and love our own identity, protect and preserve our culture, create wealth, create employment. And so it's very crucial that this statute is here, and that we cannot work outside a framework. We do need some form of framework to be able to work in, that we are all harmonized in a way so that we know we are all on the same page. And so without much ado, I'll call on Dr. Vicentia to really do us the honors and tell us what is in the statute.
Thank you so much, Akofa. Good afternoon, colleagues, excellencies. I will present briefly on the statute. And it's available in 4 languages, and we have the soft copy, and it's a public document. We will share with people. It is an opportunity for us from African Union Commission to share the document with you all. So we have it in English, French, Portuguese, and Arabic. So it's a PDF, so we can share it. Maybe please, if you can share with the groups which you engaged, will be fine. I've shared with you all the 4 versions. The statute, as Jen said, is the fundamental document for the institution, the AACC, for this particular matter. For this statute, it has 40 articles. 40 articles. And it describes how the AACC is formulated, is operationalized, and functioning to deliver. So it provides, I can say it's a mother document of the institution. And I won't go to the preamble, which Jane has stated it correctly, starting from 2003. But the first part of the document has definitions. And I will just say there's a definition of, among others, the creative economy definition is in here, because the previous speaker was saying that it's important to define the creative economy. So one of the definitions about to be used by the AACC is the creative economy, and it is within this document. And it says creative economy means the interface between creativity, culture, economics, and technology as expressed in the ability to create and circulate intellectual capital with the potential to generate income, jobs, and export earnings, while at the same time promoting social inclusion, cultural diversity, and human development. So there's a working document, there's a working definition of creative economy. Now, at the very beginning, which is Article 2, it talks about the status of the institution. And AACC is a specialized agency of the African Union. And it has 3 mandates. And one is to develop and strengthen the African audiovisual and cinema industry. But 2, to encourage the establishment of appropriate structures at the national, regional, and continental levels to strengthen cooperation between African states in the area of audiovisual and cinema. And the last one is, through the use of audiovisual and cinematic expressions, promote creativity, innovation, integration, solidarity, respect of values, mutual understanding, foster peace, and promote a positive image of Africa. During the first panel, there were discussions on the status of in the previous panel. The first one, not in the order of the first one, but to encourage the signing of cooperation treaties that would enhance the movement of filmmakers across African borders and exchange programs. It's important that our continent people are working and they have ability to move across the continent. The other one is to foster the talent of the young people through trainings and certification of African film industry to ensure the quality. There's also another function which is important to support the protection of intellectual property. We've been talking about the piracy. So one of the function is here. The other one is also there was an issue of archive to establish, strengthen, and promote African film archives that hold key audiovisual and film material from various parts of the Africa for prosperity. I would like to mention one of very important function is to promote the use of African content. It proposes 70%. So our media and live streaming, at least to streamline a minimum of 70% of African content in the programming. So this is within the functions of the AACC, and it encourages member states to do so in their theaters, in their channels, TV station, etc. It also talks about education and training as very important. There are several functions, I think there are like 5 functions, which are purely on training and fostering knowledge sharing and transmission. That goes in collaboration with research. The first in the list and the order is to promote research. And this is very important for the institution, that it will enable close collaboration between the institution and other research institutions. So many of the dreams of the filmmaking industries in the continent fall under the functions of the AACC. So the next article, which is Article 5, is a membership. This is a member state institution and it's open to all 55. Honorable Moyo, 55. You repeatedly said 54. So I should say it's open to 55 member states of the continent. And each member state has an equal right within the institution. And also the statute has given AACC a legal mandate to sue and to be sued and do all other legal procedures. So I won't go to all 40 articles, but I will pick some which I think they emerge also in the previous discussion in the to save time as well. The other article describes the headquarters of the AACC, and it says that shall be determined by the Assembly of the Union, which is the supreme organ of the AU. So they will determine, but for this matter we have Kenya with the host agreement for the temporary secretariat at the moment. So governance of the AACC. Article 9 has provided 5 layers of the governance of the AACC. The first one is the Council of Ministers. The second one is the Governing Board. The third is the Technical Advisory Committee. And then we have African Audiovisual and Cinema Forum and the Secretariat, which comes the fifth. Every governing body has its own composition and functions. As Jane said, the institution has provided a room for the filmmakers to be part and parcel of the institution within the governance of the institution. For example, if I go to the Technical and Advisory Committee of the AACC, it says that the board shall, upon recommendation of the AACC Forum, appoint Technical Advisory Committee composed of 9 members from each of the following disciplines: training, skills development and academia, production, archiving, editing, cinematography, distribution, law, sound and audio, and finance. So you see the practitioners are having a forum within the institution. Now, so there's an article which also says that there's a need for AACC to have relationship with other institutions, and this is Article 25, and it says that AACC may, not sure it's may or shall, may, but the statute says may establish and maintain working relationships with intergovernmental, international, regional and national institutions that may assist AACC to achieve its objectives and mandate. So the room for collaboration with the AACC is open. It's a broad room for cooperation. And many people would like to know how the finances of the institution, how the expenses as well of the institutions are being monitored and covered. ACC shall be funded by, and this is very important, annual statutory and special contribution to be paid by state parties and shall be determined by the Council of Ministers. So one of the functions of the Council of Ministers is to determine the contribution from state parties, but also income from services rendered by AACC. As we have seen, there are 30 functions. So out of those functions also, ACC is allowed to generate resources, but also income from property owned or other investments made by AACC. Of course, it may receive donations and voluntary contributions as well, from state parties, from other states and institutions that are not members of the AACC, but they can also receive any other sources approved by the governing board. On the expenses, it's very clear that it will be operating with the approved budget, and then it should be audited according to the AACC systems. Working languages, as an institution, all working languages. But what is very important, and I want to put an emphasis for this presentation today, is the fact that, as Jane said, we need 15 member states to ratify the statute in order for this statute to get into force. So we are appealing for the member states here from the home, Kenya, to start the exercise of ratifying the statute by leading by example, so that we can be able to push others to also ratify this one so that it can enter into force. I've been reminded, Moyo, Zim, please, we need Zim to join us. I appreciate that, Honorable. So it's very important to persuade our governments to sign this document, because if it takes long, it becomes difficult to implement all these functions within this statute. So I'm appealing to filmmakers from each country who are here to request from our policymakers to take this issue as important as possible. And the process of ratification is known. The signed documents are deposited at the AUC. So the good thing about the statute is also providing member states who want to withdraw also. So it's not it's a binding document, but you are allowed also to withdraw with the procedures outlined in the statute. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Vicentia. Dr. Manuel, you have something to add to that? So one thing that's got my attention where you're talking is that we really need our governments to make sure that this is rectified before it can become a real document to work with. And I'm wondering, how can the media help the fourth estate? How will the media help in disseminating this information? How will the media help in pushing this agenda in our various countries? Is there a strategy? Is there a work plan towards that? Maybe that's food for thought. I know that in Ghana, I'm also belong to an association called the Ghana Culture Forum, and what we're brainstorming is to try and get student journalists who are interested in CCI to train specially in reporting and writing about the cultural industries, because we have so many media personnel who specializes in just sports. We have those who are doing just environment. We have those who are doing just education. But when it comes to the CCI, it's like somebody somewhere just pick the pen and write something. They are not experts, and yeah, they don't really have the love and understanding. Only a few do. So this is just food for thought. Maybe we can think around it and see how, even if it means we have to sponsor people to be trained specially so they can speak for us and help push the agenda of the CCIs and the AACC. That's just some food for thought. So let me come to you. I thought you had something to add to it. Do you have something to add to it? Not now. Yes. Okay. So if we have questions on what Dr. Vicentia just read, we'll take some few questions before I come to the people with the money at the Afri-Exim Bank. Do we have any questions, please? With what Dr. Vicentia read? Yes. Thanks. There's a lady there.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, thank you to our panelists. But before I remember the first panelist, they were saying they will ask questions. So my name is Simon Adam from Deaf Kenya Film Festivals, and I'm happy to be here. So I want to ask SCC. During the session, I was very keen listening to what they were saying. So before we went for our lunch, we had a panel, a group of panelists. So I had a question that time. So now I want to ask my question. Before we were talking about the launching of Aacc. So my question now is there a person with disability included in the film? And if not, is there any process or any way that you can try to include a person with disability in decision making so that we can give our views also as person with disability in the film industry? Thank you.
Could you please raise your hands again so we can see you? Okay.
Thank you very much. That was a great presentation. My name is Faith. I'm from the African Union Commission, so it's the Commission asking the Commission. But my question is in relation to how are you collaborating with media, not as the, how do I say, not as the broadcasters, but as a mouthpiece to be able to help with the policy part of on the implementation of this, is it a protocol? I don't know what to call it. But how are you working with the media to be able to get this ratified and entering into force? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I was listening to some of the functions, and you cited one as promoting the local content. I don't know how far that goes, because we don't know how much history within our continent and culture that is on the screen. Because if you look at some of the memorable movies we can remember, like Shaka Zulu, Mandela, the Sarafina, such kind of movies. Do you have, I don't know the kind of funding or whatever, do you have any deliberate efforts where you can promote the preservation of our history and culture on the screen? That is the fastest way, first of all, of getting content, the local content, before we even go to other areas. Thank you.
That's the last hand there, and then we'll go to the answers.
Hi. So curious question number one is, first of all, how did Kenya end up being the headquarters for the Aacc? If I got it right, I think we're going to have the office here. Secondly, how many countries were involved in making that policy document you just from reading? And you mentioned 15 countries are required to have the document passed. How many countries are on board at the moment? And what processes are involved in trying to get more countries involved? And the last one, which probably should have been in the morning session, about someone mentioned something about AI, and I'm also curious to know, we're talking about 2063 as, you know, one of the big agendas that Aacc is going to tackle. I don't know about you guys, but I'm scared for the next 5 years with the film industry with AI coming on board. So what other, you know, because the way AI came to the industry and it's already taking over some people's jobs as it is, with AI producing films, you know, scripts by themselves, and you know, like, what protective measures are there, not just, you know, as a filmmaker, but generally as a film industry all over the world, you know, and what Aacc can try and curb that AI monster.
Valid point. Any three of you can answer any other questions.
Hello. Yeah. Before I answer, I want to ask how many filmmakers are in the room? Please raise your hands. Thank you. I know Vincentia had asked how many have read the statute. There was only one hand. And this is our problem. Let me say that. Because sitting in this meeting to discuss the Aacc and you have not read the statute, it's a big problem. Especially, and I'm pointing a finger at filmmakers because I'm one. Because the questions I'm hearing, you know, one needs to understand the institution. Because here we are talking about the institution, and this institution is what I would want to say is a facilitator. The people to do the job are still the filmmakers. So for me, I think the first step, before we even ask the media to come in to play their part, we are talking of filmmakers understanding what is the African Audiovisual and Cinema Commission, what is its mandate, how can I play my part as a filmmaker, how can I lobby my government to ratify the statute? Because this is what it is. This is a body that is going to be looking at putting policies in place that can help the industry grow. So for me, I think it's important that we read the statute. And one of the questions is how many member states were involved when this was being put in place. We had more than 15 member states. At the African Union, you need a third of the membership when you are working on anything. So we had the quorum, but we need now to start the process of ratification. But we also had 43 member states actually endorsing the statutes in 2017. The validation. So the goodwill is there. So what I want to say myself is that I think the bulk of the work lies with the temporary secretariat staff. And now you say this because one of the key mandates was actually to make sure that the statutes are ratified by the required number for it to enter into force. The other thing that I know, and I'm talking out of experience, to bring people together to discuss something like this, we need somebody, that person who, or that body that convinced the people, and that's the secretariat of the Aacc, of the temporary secretariat. So I think that what is needed is, because we've just, actually it is going to be launched tomorrow and they are going to start their job, is to see how we liaise from our different countries with the people who are going to be at the secretariat to move it forward. The question of disability, I think even in the statute at some point it's brought out. But I think to answer that question, it also goes, it is the filmmaker or the people now doing the actual work who then needs also to include people with disabilities in the work that we do. And I've done that many times myself as a filmmaker. Local content, again, it is talked about, it's one of the functions that we talked about, but again, it needs to more work to be put in. About AI, I don't know whether when we were when we were drafting these statutes we were there, so maybe it is something that we need to look at. It's not something that we can wish away because it is here with us. And I think the statutes are not written on stone. There is a way of making sure that you can revise them, but that is also after maybe this first step of ratification. Thank you. Let me hand over to Vicentia.
Thank you so much, Jane. Maybe I add from there, the Article 31 of the statute, it gives the state parties the responsibilities of popularizing the statute. So the popularization of the statute is not only for the Secretariat, but in the document it's very clear that state parties shall take all appropriate measures to ensure the widest possible dissemination of this statute in accordance with the relevant provisions and procedures in their respective constitutions. So because the issue of signing and ratification is constitutional, and each member state has its own internal procedures, so the issue of popularization is also on the member state. And I believe that the more people in a member state are aware of this statute and the existence of African Audiovisual and Cinema Commission, AACC, the more profitable it becomes to the citizens.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just thought I should say one or two sentences in the area of AI. I think we need to understand that this is an opportunity more than a threat. So let's not always think in terms of new technologies taking our jobs. They are creating new jobs in that process. If your job is basically just routine, it's likely going to be phased out. But the fact is that you can never take away the human creativity. That component of it will always remain with us. What do we need to do? We need to continuously reinvent ourselves and train ourselves so that we can effectively adjust as the technologies are shaping our reality. Just last week, I was among the 1,300 teachers in a tertiary institution across Africa that went through a 13-week training in the area of AI and its impact on research, teaching, and community service. And that ended with those of us in Nigeria forming only 2 days ago a National Association of AI Practitioners. What is the essence? The major thing we need to recognize is what we need to do is to talk about having ethical code. And some of our countries, I'm happy, have started putting in place those codes to ensure that we regulate the application of AI, particularly when it has to do with issues of who owns what. I'm happy South Africa has just done something in that area to answer the question of who owns the copyright. Because most of these platforms are not owned by us. But we train the machines the data at the moment doesn't have our own side of the story. But as we interact with it, we are providing more content. Why should I agree with the US and some European countries that already have in place ideas and are beginning to say that, particularly the US, that the content, whatever is generated by AI, belongs to the owner of the facility? Nothing can be more criminal than that. So I want to thank South Africa for coming out with its own answer to who owns such content. And this is what most of our countries must begin to do. This is what we also, as practitioners in the audiovisual industry, need to also begin to think of. How do we regulate to ensure high ethical standards, even as AI is beginning to more and more influence the way we work? But we must always think about opportunities and not to give up and assume that it is a big threat. Once you provide a regulation and it is enforced, then you will be able to leverage more of the opportunities. I just thought I should add that.
Thank you very much. Can we come back to you after his action plan? Well, since you have the mic, Prof, would you go on and tell us about the action plan of the AACC? Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I will stand because I'm a teacher. I don't know if I can have the slides here. You know, in Nigeria, there's a town called Sokoto, Sokoto. That is the seat of the caliphate, and that's where our former president Shehu Shagari comes from, Sokoto. But the Yoruba people also call trouser this, Sokoto. In their own case, it's pronounced Shokoto, but the same spelling. And I'm happy that we have this opportunity to engage on this. This is because I realize that we have in this sector one of those proverbs we share in Nigeria to say that what you are looking for in Sokoto is in your Shokoto. You know, most times we are not aware of some of the things that are in place, some of the frameworks that are in place to support the growth of our sector. And the first thing we do when we come together as professionals is to begin to attack agencies, particularly the AU. Is always the whipping boy because AU is not doing anything. And I'm not surprised because even the United Nations is fast becoming a whipping boy now, particularly with the handling of some of the global conflicts. So this presentation is to share with us what the AU has done and has been doing to ensure that we have support for member states to have a vibrant cultural and creative industries. Now, I thought you gave me this so I can move it myself. Are you helping me to move it? That is a cool plot. Thank you. I like to be in control of my environment. Now, I've tried to just pick some definitions because sometimes, also one of the things my friend Dr. Ezekiel Loyango said is there's no definition. You know, we need to have our definition, and I'm sure that reading through the statutes, you see that there's a definition also of what we are talking about. But the common definition that will help us to understand is simply to see the cultural and creative industries as industries that generate wealth and employment through the exploitation of heritage and cultural aspect of a people, as well as the skills, creativity of individuals to produce knowledge-based artistic and creative products and services. I have tried to reproduce from the UNCTAD document some of the areas. And for us here, we can see audiovisual there. You know, so it's one of the sectors. And that means that whatever we're talking here, the AU has taken time to look at how the audiovisual sector will play out. Now, whether you're looking at it from the point of view of the agenda 2030 agenda, which defines the SDGs, or you're looking at it from the point of view of our AU agenda 2063, culture the UN document. Now, in Agenda 2063, culture is strongly defined in Aspiration 5, where we talk about having an Africa that has strong cultural identity, shared values, and ethics. So these SDG goals have very strong component of culture. Now, generally, from available statistics, the cultural and creative industries have seen quite some statistics being bandied, some of them quoting the same sources, but this is from research, so I can define it. That's why I'm putting the sources. It's good that we also know that we have problem in the area of data in this sector. But the study 2021, which one of my colleagues quoted earlier on, actually says that worldwide the CCIs generated about $4,200 billion as revenue and employed about 45 million people. And of course, the UNESCO study says the CCI accounts for 3.1% of global gross domestic product and 6.2% of all employment globally. And of course, it employs, for the age grade between 50 to 29, that's a larger percentage, which means that it provides employment for 20% of those in the sector. I also thought I should pick this from the report, particularly in the area of the economic value that has come from the sector. Globally, we are talking of 12.1 billion from global collections in this sector. What is exciting here is that your sector, our sector, is actually the elephant, with about 645 million, reckoning that out of the 12.1 billion. And of course, you can see the performance of other sectors from this 12.5 global collections. It's also exciting to see that in all these regions, there has been growth in this sector, you know, in terms of royalty collections in particular, because this is talking about actual royalties collected from the CCIs. In 2022, virtually every region had increase in percentage. Of course, Europe still remains ahead, and but what is most important is that even the African statistics have shown that we experienced 10.1% growth in this sector. What is this telling us? That this is a very, very important sector. You can go on to, I've also provided quite a number of sources. So you can see that it is a sector that must command the attention of any serious government or any serious institution. By the way, in terms of direct employment, the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics has reported that Nollywood is employing 300,000 direct employment. That is more than the population of Seychelles and I think Sao Tome put together. You know, imagine that one sector is employing people in those two countries put together. And when you add the indirect impact, you will also be able to add more islands. And you see that in terms of impact, it's catering for more than population of 4 African countries put together. Especially when you look at the top 10 African countries with small populations. I take it that these slides will be available, so you can see that the growth itself is driven by 3 major factors I've identified, particularly for us in Africa. There's the issue of innovativeness. We have large population of youth, highly innovative. There's also the issue of, because of the challenges in the environment, we've learned resilience. You know, and so we always come up with alternatives, and that is the story of the Nollywood that we've been talking about since morning. Of course, there's a growth also in the digital economy. Africa has one of the highest rates of internet penetration and is still growing. Our diversity of cultural expression also provides us a lot of resource to develop different products in this sector. Why this is working, or you're just watching me and moving the slides? Because each time I press it 2-3 times. All right, that's fine. Now, why do we need to bother about the CCIs? This is because it's the best way to address some of the problems you have on the other side of the screen. Most of the conflicts are driven by some of these challenges with the economy. And if we have a sector that already have comparative advantage, if properly developed, we can actually overtake the rest of the world, then we need to really invest in the CCI. It's important for us to know that if we don't even take this seriously, we are going to face bigger danger. Look at the last point there. Africa needs to create 1 million jobs every month to integrate the flow of new arrivals into the labor market. And so it's a really, really huge challenge, because 13 million young Africans join the labor market every year. And since this is a sector from the Nigeria experience that can take the populations, almost 1/3 of the populations of some countries, why won't us and our governments invest in developing this sector? You can move the next slide now. All right. Well, here I've also gone on to explain some of those non-monetary value that comes from the sector. Why are we saying this? Is to tell you that this is actually what the AU is responding to. And this started from the World Decade for Cultural Development, 1998 to 1997, which of course gave birth to the Dakar Plan of Action on Cultural and Creative Industries. That document also faced a lot of suggestions on some of the limitations, and that led to the decision by PAC 5, which held in September 2018, and strengthened the need for us to have a revision of that document. And having been adopted by the STC on Youth, Culture and Sports 3 in November 2018, the process began. Of course, these are some of the reasons why it became necessary to revise the document. As we mentioned in the morning, there is renewed interest in this sector across every country in Africa, if not globally, that CCIs are actually a springboard for the integration of Africa. It also became necessary to update information to capture new trends. ICT was still relatively new when the Dakar Plan of Action was put in place. Now we are talking of AI, and we really did not capture AI here. So you see, we are beginning to have need to also see new trends that we need to incorporate. We also saw that it became necessary for us to not, if you have a plan, for it to be implemented, you must develop objectives. And those objectives should be measurable so that at a point in time you can track whether you're performing or not. That was not there in the Dakar Plan of Action. And so we equally have in the new document a monitoring and evaluation framework. It went through, it doesn't that somebody woke up and came up with a document. It took 6 years to develop it. The African Union Commission started a process in 2019 by constituting a committee made up of 18 experts. My sister here, Jane, was one of those who represented the film and audiovisual sector in the committee. And of course, the larger committee had 3 major meetings. And she says we spent 3 days in November 2018. 2019, we were in Eswatini. In the same year, we were also in Cape Town before COVID intervened. Luckily, before then, it became necessary to have a small technical committee that can now look at the details of those broad objectives that were developed by the larger committee. And so a 9-man technical working group, which I had the privilege of chairing, started work on the detailed document. And we had our first meeting of that small group in 2019, June, in Addis Ababa. And then, of course, with COVID, we had about 6 online meetings to shape the documents. And member states were invited on between March 31st and 1st April, 2 days validation online in 2021. And so we took in a lot of inputs, and thanks to member states that attended to shape the document. So that document that had the input of member states and approval of member states was presented during the 2021 Africa Integration Day. That was 9th July 2021. And that went to the 4th Specialized Technical Committee on Youth, Culture, and Sports. With the approval, it then moved on to the final approval by the Executive Council and the coming into force, which was in 2023. So we have a document that has actually gone through all the processes of the AU, and it's been, it has taken along a lot of input from all the stakeholders as we went on. The sector was adequately represented. Now, I started by telling you the potentials of the sector. But why is Africa underperforming? As you see from the same collections, you'll see that we have the list of all the continents represented here. So we want to look at some of the reasons why Africa is underperforming. And I'm happy that most of them, we have talked about them this morning. And that also is further confirmation that this is a document that is ahead of some of our practitioners here today, in the sense that we are still talking about it, whereas AU has taken steps to provide solutions with respect to what the stakeholders can do. We have the issue of poor access to global markets. We talked about that. Limited infrastructure. We have the big challenge of absence of reliable cultural data, which has played out this morning. Every speaker had slightly different statistics, and that's why luckily I thought I should provide the sources so you can confirm. We also have the challenge of low capitalization and limited access to finance and investment by operators in the CCI sector in Africa. And of course, there is the issue of low collection of royalties, as you saw in the slide before this. One of the things, the learnings from this process, particularly for those of us that were at the end of collecting and information and listening to stakeholders through series of engagements like this, is that one, for best results, our cultural and creative industries must be looked at as one that you cannot address in isolation. You have to look at the entire ecosystem of the sector for you to have an integrated approach towards developing it. For instance, there are so many things that this sector requires. As simple as basic infrastructure like electricity, means of transportation and all that. Some of our colleagues are not here because of challenge with connecting. You're coming from West Africa, you have to go sometime to South Africa before you come to East Africa and all that. You know, so these are some of the major challenges. If we look at it as one that you need to have an integrated approach, we're likely going to have better results for the sector. Then it's also important for us to know that the way our countries operate makes it difficult for you to also maximize. Within the same country, you have functions within this sector spread over 3 ministries. You know, if you take Kenya is Minister of Youth Affairs, Creative Economy and Sports. In Nigeria, it is Minister of Arts, Culture and Creative Economy. You know, Creative Economy just came in with this new administration. You go elsewhere, it's with Women Affairs, and even in Nigeria, for instance, some of the functions are under Minister of Trade and Industries. You know, so because they are in different places and fragmentation, naturally it becomes difficult for you to have harmonized policies that can drive development. So we need to get our governments to address this uncoordinated approach because you have policies in the same sector. Some of them are actually contradictory. There's also the insufficient implementation of intellectual property, because some of the proceeds, if not most of it, they come from royalties. And so if you don't have a regime that protects intellectual property rights, you are not also likely to maximize gains from the sector. And of course, there's a lot of gaps in the skill sets across the country, which also has been addressed by the plan of action. And there is the issue of limited market and the fact that some of our products are not globally competitive. Nollywood, for instance, that we talked about, started with very poor quality of but very high turnover, simply because people could connect with the stories, and so they were still happy to follow Nollywood. And I'm happy that that segment, with more funding coming in, they have gradually been able to address a large part of the problem with the technical quality of their productions. It's working now. I can verify. Now, what were the objectives of the revision of the AU Plan of Action on Cultural Industries? There were 8. One of them is to facilitate the creation, adoption, and implementation of participatory and inclusive legislative frameworks and national cultural governance systems. There are, sitting here, I got a chart from the Director of Culture from Ghana, asking if Nigeria has a policy on restitution. So you find that most of the provisions across the country, we also would need to support ourselves as professionals, support the government to have laws that are actually addressing the problems. Most of our laws are deficient. So this is one of the areas that this exercise tried to address. I am taking time, but just 10 more minutes to go through this, because most of us, this has been out there for very long. Most of us might not have read it. And because I don't want you to go to Sokoto, which is far away, to look for what is in your Sokoto, I will take 10 more minutes to just go through the slides, so that at the end of the day, you can actually speak for the content of this document. We also tried to see that we made in that the issue of funding was addressed, because there is now a provision of a percentage of the budget, national budget, to be dedicated. And since the heads of states and government have approved this document, it means that we can now begin to advocate for it. If we are now saying that in the first 10 years of implementation, at least minimum of 5% of the national budget should be dedicated to the cultural and creative industry. So it gives us something to hold our governments accountable for. We also need, this also tried to see that we address the issue of markets and how do we get products that are globally competitive. It also tried to address the issues of new technologies in supporting the growth of this sector. And of course, it talked about, it set out to address the issue of how do we support to have copyright and all that. Going forward, these are the 9 priority areas it identified if Africa should actually leverage its strength in this area of cultural and creative industries. So the first is legislative and cultural policy frameworks. It made very good provisions that any member state can actually draw from and end up with a very good environment. It also addressed the issue of Africa's cultural, the market for the creative industries. It also talked about education, capacity building, and sustainability. These are all issues that were talked about here this morning as some of the challenges. And so, by way of summary, the action plan has 9 thematic areas, which I have just showed you. Then it also gives us a situational analysis on each of those areas. It tells you where we are at the moment, and it tells you what the challenges are, and then moves on to tell you what we need to do. It also has in place a monitor and evaluation framework. So it's not just talking about what to do, it also provides for us how we can ensure that we check from time to time to see that that is being done. So it has objectives, it has 6 goals, it has 8 principles. Now these are some of the recommendations. I took a few. in the area of develop and strengthen new and existing markets for CCI, we talked about seed funding and innovative financial support. Jacob will be taking 5 minutes to talk about that in details. We also talk about visa liberalization to ease mobility. It also talked about the need for us to have cooperative groups and production clusters so that we can maximize our strengths. It talked about also having regional hubs in audiovisual and cinema. This is one of the areas that Auntie Jane advocated strongly. So if you're a filmmaker, please clap for her, because she was a strong advocate. That is not strong enough. If you know the extent of arguments, and you know, so thank you very much, Auntie Jane. And then it also provided suggestions on how member states in particular can support the area of cultural exchange, both within the region and also outside Africa. And then it addressed, again in the area of audiovisual, the issue of co-production and co-distribution partnership and agreements. It also addresses the issue of some of these trade agreements we sign. It provides that just as we have in the model law, it's important for our governments to also include something on the cultural sector, something on the CCIs in the agreements that we're signing with our multilateral partners. Then the issue of strengthening national cultural and creative industry policies. It highlighted how we can strengthen our legislative frameworks. It also talked about the issue of safeguarding our heritage, which includes repatriation and restitution of stolen cultural goods. It also provides for how areas we can easily map and identify what legislations and what regulations to amend, particularly identifying the areas of concern, especially the issues of how do you protect your products in the digital space. Then it talked about the issue of inter-African cooperation and how do we grow common markets. So it advocates and provides how we Africa can realize, particularly member states, the issue of bringing in more of the activities in our sector into the formal economy. By the way, the Nigerian economy overtook South Africa simply by a simple study we did in 2013, which was even just to map the film, fashion, and what is it now? Film, fashion, and music. You know, by that, I had the privilege of chairing that research, which was sponsored by British Council. But because we had the National Bureau of Statistics in my committee, we sensitized them, and they saw more of the activities that can be captured in the formal economy that they have been ignoring. And the moment they did that, the GDP shot up, and the size became the largest in Africa. And I think they are doing more and more to incorporate more of such. So this is one area we must do. Your economies are bigger than they are reading on the paper now, because there are many activities here that are still largely in the informal sector. And so that also is addressed here. There's also the issue of public-private partnership, which has been addressed. Then there are provisions with respect to intellectual property rights and digital rights of citizens. We try to define for the first time the need for us not just to protect intellectual property, but also to know that the citizens have rights to enjoy some of those digital products, because that also is a playing field now. And I'm happy that none of you is sleeping. I have just 2 minutes to round up. Please clap for yourself for not sleeping. And if you are sleeping by clapping, you will be waking up. Thank you so much indeed. So it talked about we need to improve the capacity for royalty collections. And again, we had, it was a broad-based committee, and so we had ideas and experts from different areas. So I just want to say that the idea to create database for CCI activities and ensure equitable access to ICT by all citizens, that's what we mean by digital rights. It also addressed the issue of developing African digital market gateways as enablers of marketing distribution and sales of cultural and creative industry products. And so you can see that some of the things we are talking about in the morning, the solutions are already here. The ideas are here. And so we need to read. In the area of education and training, it identified this, some of the skill sets that we need to improve upon. It also talked about the need for us to mainstream arts education into the formative years so that children can begin to express themselves in those creative activities from the early stages. And I'm happy that the AUC is already developing a policy, a draft policy on arts in education. I think the AUC deserves a round of applause. I'm sure you are not aware of that. It shows that they are thinking and they are listening to us. And I know that there are two things Angela picked from our contribution this morning that will become projects at the end of this meeting. So when you see how quiet she's listening and jotting down. Then we're rounding up now. The issue of finance and investment, it also raised the issue of checking multiple taxation, which is a major problem in our sector. You are shooting film, different agencies of government come to you to ask for receipts. It's a major problem. It also talked about what kind of incentives can we provide to the financial institutions so that they will find it convenient to invest in this sector. It also mentioned strongly the role of the African and diaspora population to strengthen work in this area. Then the issue of cultural statistics, it also tried to identify and make recommendations on what could be done by member states. Some of it will require amendment of those international codes that have left out some of our activities in this sector in the informal sector. This is what I told you Nigeria did partly, and it had the largest economy in Africa. And it also talked about the need for us to drive entrepreneurship within this sector, and how do we do that. Of course, cultural infrastructure is a major problem, so it equally made some recommendations, and I don't want to stay too long, but most importantly, there is a strong value from this sector, and that is the issue of social inclusion and cohesion. You can see that this is a VIP. Never mind that it has a Nigerian coat of arms, but as a regular thing, you see somebody in a flashy car surrounded by so many hungry people. And that is a sorry state in most of our states today. So we need to understand that these people you have left out of the car are actually going to make it difficult for you to enjoy the money that you have made from through whatever means. And so this is the last slide. It also talks about, of course, I'm sure that metrics will now be 2023, since it came into force in 2023. It identifies for each of those priority areas, what are the strategic interventions needed, what are the expected results, what is the time frame expected, what are the indicators, what are the means of verification, and what bodies are responsible for implementing those interventions, what then are the resources needed. You'll agree with me that this is a well thought out document. It might not be completely, it might not have solved all the problems, because we have identified now that AI is coming up strongly, but it is a living thing, and it has already suggestions that we should begin to sensitize ourselves to as stakeholders, so that we can move on to advocate for them in our member states, and also begin to apply some of them to the way we do our business. I want to just ask that Jacob will address the issue of funding. He has only 4 slides. He doesn't talk much like me. He's a man of finance. Put your hands together for Jacob, please. His slides are with you as well.
Can I control my own environment?
By the way,
tell me.
Jacob is Kenyan, so you can find them in the double slide.
Thank you very much, Prof. I know it's past. It's almost quarter past. You were supposed to finish at 4, but I'll try quickly to run through the finance and investment. The slides, please.
The slide is there. Jacob, say you should hold it.
So I'll quickly run through the finance and investment, and I'll probably, as Professor said, there were 9 key areas. I'll probably run through just one, not again repeat what he said, focusing on priority area 4 on finance and investment. I can't get the slides, I don't know.
I need you to speak to them in local language.
So, maybe I lose my laptop, so I don't know. Okay, thank you very much. Again, my name is Jacob. I am a Kenyan, but I work for an organization by the name African World Heritage Fund. It's a fund focusing on world heritage. Of course, it's just heritage. So, briefly, quickly, I will try and pose some 2 key questions in accordance to what I'm going to discuss. Number 1 is, what are the major obstacles in financing and investing in CCIs? Remember, in the morning there was a debate, a discussion on some of these points. And then secondly, what are the possible solutions? I will quickly run through some of the possible solutions to overcome the issues financing and investing. I may not provide all the answers. I'll try some of the key areas that probably came up this morning. Now, as Professor was talking, he was referring to finance and investment. And one of the key points in that, under that key priority area is that lack of suitable financial support systems to back the development of CCIs in Africa has confined the activities mainly to informal sector, where financials and other constraints limit the scale and quality of the CCIs. And also Professor touched on that. And then if I go back to my questions again, the first question, what are the major obstacles? One, as Professor was mentioned some of them, is access to finance and investment as a major hurdle. Then secondly, the informal micro enterprises, they do not have actually they actually do not have the financial means to operate outside their immediate domestic markets. And then number 3, the member states allocate limited resources to CCIs, to CCIs development compared to other competing sectors like health, of course, education. They are all important, but when it comes to the CCIs, allocating resources to CCIs, you find that these are some of the areas you find when there is lack of budget or limited funding. This is where they go and cut the resources. They cut the budgets. So we need to fight for this as the key players in the sector. And then number 4, a large proportion of the CCI sector is made up of the sole traders, small and medium enterprises operating in the informal sectors. Mostly they are in informal sectors, and probably something needs to be done to try and upscale the way things are done. Then number 5, there's lack of awareness, and again Professor mentioned about this, and in the morning also there was this point came up. There's lack of awareness of such opportunities due to inadequate dissemination and sharing of information. The information is, there are resources, but since the role players in the sector do not have the information, they are unable, to access some of these financial resources. And then number 6, funding from development agencies. And when I say development agencies, includes, for example, the organization I'm working for. working to improve CCIs is usually not coordinated. You find that there's a lot of funding. Yes, there can be a lot of funding out there, but coordination, you may find, if I give my own example, that we are funding one institution. UNESCO, for example, also is funding another institution, the same institution. So you find there is double digging in the same, but they are trying to address a similar lack of financial resources to a specific organization. So lack of coordination also within the sector is bringing a lot of confusion in terms of accessing these resources. Then number 7, lack of understanding. On one hand, financial and investment institutions, and on the other hand, you find that the players themselves, they don't understand actually what is available, what needs to be funded, where are the needs, where are the gaps for them to provide this funding. And then what are the possible solutions to overcome the obstacles? And as I said again, I'm saying everything, but probably is something which we need to think of. My apologies, I'm looking at my screen because I forgot about that. What are the possible solutions to overcome these obstacles? One is to provide entrepreneurs with skills and knowledge through business development and incubation programs. I know my sister is here. She's probably she will talk about that, incubation programs. I know she's very much involved in that. And then 2, educate audiences by creating greater proximity, greater proximity and access to the content. The other point is advocate and lobby governments to invest in capacity building programs and undertake periodic research. I remember also in the morning the issue of research also came up during the first panel this morning. And then the last point here on this slide is encourage purpose-built training and business support across the entire life cycle of the CCIs. And then if I may just continue, there's a critical point here that the close proximity gap, we need to close that proximity gap between the funders, the development partners, and creative businesses. And here I went further and say that to increase, in order to increase the understanding among all stakeholders, to facilitate a more mutually informed exchange between the investors and the recipients of these financials, of the financial resources. And then on the second last point, member states to increase national budgets and resources allocated to CCIs. And actually, it is one of the recommendations in the revised plan of action, is that 5% needs within the first 10 years, we need to increase this by 5%. Then member states should facilitate the emergence and growth of the CCI businesses. And I think also when the statute was being presented, this point was emphasized that member states, this is your baby. Member states should facilitate the emergency and growth of the CCI's businesses within and that are globally competitive. Now, as I said, this was just an addition to what the professor was discussing, and I'm open to probably questions and any other additions that probably other panelists might have. Thank you very much.
Let's do it better. I think we all agree that this is a really thought out and well thought out and very extensive document, and we all need to get copies and study it properly so we can understand and know how to use it for our benefit. Because of time, I'm going to skip you if you don't mind, and I'm going to talk to Mr. Temra. Please introduce yourself when you take the mic. Forgive me with my pronunciations. But you are with the Trade Facilitation Department of Afrexim Bank. Tell us what exactly do you do? How will that benefit us? How are we supposed to position ourselves to be able to access what you have to offer? Because we all agree that without funding, we cannot go far. And we've all agreed that Africa is a gold mine when it comes to the CCIs. But we need the funding to be able to access it. And the only way we can achieve the United States of Africa is by using the arts to bring us together and to harness the wealth that is lying fallow. So please tell us how to position ourselves and what you do.
Thank you very much. It's the end of the day, so I'll try and be as succinct as possible. My name is Temwa Gondwe. I head Afrexim Bank's Creative Africa Nexus program, which is part of the Inter-African Trade Bank within Afrexim Bank. This program is there to support the development and growth of creative and cultural industries on the continent. It stands on 6 pillars: financing, capacity building, digital solutions, partnerships and linkages, policy advocacy, export development, and investment promotion. These pillars reflect some of the key gaps and challenges that we see in the creative and cultural industries, and which I think even previous speakers, my colleagues in front here, have ably taken us through. In terms of areas of focus, we look at fashion, film, music, arts and crafts, sports, culinary arts or gastronomy, and literature. If we were to zoom in to particular on the issue of financing, I want to preface what I'm about to say by an observation that we have been making for a while. And that is, you can see over time that the creative and cultural industries in Africa is moving away from being hobby-based into being business-based. And that's why now you're looking at issues related to regulation, how the business models in the creative industry, and so on and so forth. Because for a long time, the creative and cultural industries have been handled as hobbies. That is why you go to a bank in Africa and say, I've got a film, there's no one they can send you to, because for them film is pastime. Or I've got a song, there's no client relation officer in the bank who they can give you, because it has just been looked at as passive activities. The whole world over, they have been looking at the creative industries as strategic industries. That is why, if you look at France, the industry has been able to grow and surpass the growth of the auto sector, the creative industry, because they've looked at it as a business. What does it mean when we say we look at it as a business? Because the anchor for this sector to grow, in my view, is that we need to develop the business models in the sector. There's no other way. If it is going to be the if it is going to be the actor who has to make the business case, then we're missing it somewhere. There have to be lawyers who are vested in the sector. There have to be entrepreneurs who are vested in the sector. There have to be agents. So there's a whole ambit of skills that need to be part of this sector in order for it to be a market, or a structured market as some prefer to call it. And that for me is where we are sometimes missing the point. We have started, I believe, and I'll go through some of the points that you have made on the financing side. I believe that this is a good start as a group of creatives, regulators, and so on, particularly focused on film. Now, allow me to say a few things. Or you asked about some of the products that we have as a bank. So as a program, if you look at our financial instruments, they are really debt. So we have a film facility, for example. This film facility is a loan program. It can finance up to 80% of cost of production. It can finance distribution. It can finance advertisement, marketing, and so on and so forth. So there are a number of elements that it can be used to finance. But it is a loan. It is a debt. And it applies that they have securities that have to be submitted. There are covenants that have to be taken, and so on. I'll leave Angela and the organizers with a very detailed slide, which I have, which will take you through all the requirements that you need to assess this particular instrument, which is our film financing facility. Interestingly, it's our best performing facility, because in the creatives we also have a music facility, and we also have equity and so on, but film financing has been by far the best performing. So I said film and TV, series production, marketing, digital distribution, that is VOD, OTT, equipment purchase, film infrastructure development, creative industry education, and so on and so forth. And it will show you, the presentation I leave will show you in terms of eligibility. We do like co-productions, we do like joint venture partnerships, we do like you having an established track record of a minimum of 3 titles that are credited to your name before you can access this facility. So there are so many features which I would have gone in great detail to give you, but that is just one of the facilities. Another facility or program that you might have heard us announce last year is that in Q4 of this year we'll be launching what we're calling the Film Fund. The reason why we are launching a film fund is that we have realized that a number of the projects that require financing would struggle to access debt. What they need is a strategic investor who can participate on the equity side. And that is why we're introducing this fund that can also look at lower tickets, lower size tickets. So for example, 500,000, 1 million, 2 million, and so on. And those are dollars, please. So we want to participate on the equity side because we see that we can add value as well by coming in as a strategic investor in some of these projects. Linked to this is an intervention that we have introduced called Canex Creations Incorporated. Canex Creations Incorporated is an IP bank. You realize as I go along that as you generate challenges in your meetings, we might not be there when we receive the reports from Angela. We look at them and see what kind of solution is needed, and then we go out and try and implement it. So we think there's a gap in terms of IP monetization on the continent, and a huge gap. The continent needs an IP bank. So we have created Canex Creations Incorporated as an IP bank, where you can bank your IP. It can be leveraged over a number of years. If it's in music, at the end of that period, you can get back your masters after it has been leveraged and you had access to working capital to deal with your immediate needs. Because one of the reasons why a number of the creatives on the continent are just giving away their IP due to commissioned work is because they have school fees to pay. They have immediate working capital needs, and they have to put food on the table. So they can sell away their IP for a limited amount of dollars just so that they get by that day. But if someone gave them the option to say, we can get your IP, we leverage it over a period of 5-6 years, we deal with your immediate working capital requirements, whether it's for your next project and so on, and then we can, because we are a big entity, we can aggregate that and sell that IP or leverage on that IP at a higher price, meaning you have higher returns because you are also a shareholder in that particular investment. So that is something that we have incorporated in Kigali, Canex Creation is incorporated. It's incorporated in Kigali. We'll call it risk. And a messenger from us who are in the financial sector. I think a lot has to be done to support the sector with tax incentives. The same way other sectors are enjoying tax incentives. Because there's a lot in terms of branding that the sector brings. There's a lot in terms of employment, in terms of entertainment, that and entertainment leads to well-being. Can you imagine how much joy the sector brings in an economy? It can't be quantified, but it is an important contribution. I think if there's a sector that needs to enjoy tax incentives, this is one of them. I'm happy that we're dealing with one of the key regulatory issues by launching Aacc, and I think that's good. Co-productions, please, Aacc, when you are there, we are financing a film project in Egypt. It's a co-production which involved a company in Mauritius. It was easier for them in Egypt to get Mauritian actors from France than it was to get Mauritian actors from Mauritius, because there's no co-production or partnership agreements. And this, in a way, increases the cost of labor in some of the productions we have on the continent. Of course, on our side, private and venture capital is key. We need to, there's a lot of funding on the continent. There's a lot of money, capital in Africa. It is just that as a sector, we need to organize ourselves to be able to access this capital. We need to talk the business of capital. We need to understand how these business models work. For music, for example, I'll give you an example. We initiated a program, we call them Canex Music Factory. Why we initiated that project was we wanted to show these high net worth individuals that you can invest in music as an asset class. You can say, I've put my money in music, it's going to give me a return. Because sometimes the owners of capital do not understand how investing in a film makes money for them or makes a return for them. So even an effort just to educate them to say this is how films are monetized and make money, you find that that attracts funding and investment into your projects. And finally, I think the other issues you have talked about in terms of capacity building, in terms of risk perceptions and so on and so forth. In closing, I would say we're inviting you to Canex Weekend. It's happening in Algiers this year. We're doing it in partnership with the African Union. We're going to have, we have launched a program called Canex Shorts. So we're going to get short films as part of that, a competition for short films, which we rely on you to also publicize. We work also a lot with Magdalene, Durban Film Mart in a number of our initiatives. The dates are 16 to 19 October, and we look forward to welcoming you to Algiers and taking forward some of these conversations. As a Frexim Bank, we've supported this launch, and we stand firm in supporting the audiovisual sector on the continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, time is far gone. We do have another presentation coming, so is it okay if I skip the questions? Is that okay? Thank you very much. Just have 1 minute. 1 minute, please. Not more.
Let me use yours. Thank you so much. I'll just build on what you have said and what his presentation highlighted, and also Professor Dandaura. What Temo has just highlighted very good initiatives that are happening at the macro level. When we see issues about debt, equity, IP bank, and all that, but when we look at the micro level and the 1 million, people that are graduating from universities who also want to be filmmakers, we see that there should be interventions also at the micro level. So when pulling in different stakeholders into this ecosystem that is geared at changing the film ecosystem, it is important that we support also incubators at the micro level, so that we create a pipeline from incubating to acceleration to filmmakers who actually access the debt and also be able to bank their IP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a very valuable point. Thank you very much. I was going to say 20. So 25 seconds each for your last word. Just 25 seconds, no more. Okay, just yes, just one question, very short question.
Thank you. My question is about the ratification of the statutes of the Aacc. I would like to ask if the Article 36 of the statutes, does it answer the question of the starting of the process of ratification? Because it states that a condition to start the process. Please tell us about what do you think about the Article 36.
No, just that one. You can answer it. Yes, just that one.
Merci
we don't have
beaucoup.
enough time.
J'ai vraiment apprécié toutes les communications, mais je voudrais, surtout à la banque, je voudrais lui dire merci. Merci pour vous. Je ne sais pas si vous le traduisez ça, c'est important. La question pour le banquier. Pardon, donnez ça au banquier, c'est lui que au banquier. Oui, ma question s'adresse à vous, s'il vous plaît. Merci beaucoup. Je disais que je salue votre courage. Alors, je voudrais apporter, vous le savez bien, je voudrais apporter à votre connaissance que l'économie de la culture est aléatoire. Ce n'est pas comme le bic ou bien l'eau que vous avez produit et vous pouvez imaginer combien à peu près vous pouvez gagner. Vous prenez les États-Unis, la Chine, l'Europe. J'ai toujours dit, si vous faites la recherche de combien de films produits dans ces pays-là et combien de films arrivent à s'en sortir la tête de l'eau, c'est à peine 2%. Vous avez parlé de garantie. Qu'est-ce que moi, en tant que cinéaste, un jeune cinéaste qui veut commencer, qui a une bonne idée, quelle garantie vous voulez qu'il donne? Que aujourd'hui, même aux États-Unis, le cinéma ne nourrit plus même les réalisateurs. Les réalisateurs qui ont de noms, ils font de la publicité pour pouvoir gagner de l'argent. Or, au même moment, on dit qu'on doit raconter notre histoire. Au même moment, on nous dit d'avoir de garanties. Est-ce que c'est ma maison que je vais donner ou bien c'est mon salaire en tant qu'enseignant et qui veut faire le cinéma que je vais mettre en garantie? Merci.
Thank you. Do you want to answer the first one?
Oh yes, it's the article starts on the Article 33 on the signature, ratification, and accession. So I'm saying it starts on 33, whereby the member states will sign, ratify, and then will send a copy for depository in Article 36. Done? Thank you.
No. I think if people have more questions, ma'am, is it possible to have an email, WhatsApp website that people can send their questions to and then it can be answered, please, for time's sake, please. So all the questions can go then they do answer. Let's take your...
No, thank you very much for that question. I'll answer it in two parts. If you look at the financial access to finance or sources of financing, there are different levels for different activities in the film industry. So for example, we don't finance startups. It's not our area of expertise, but the organizations who can finance a startup, who take risks on startup, it is not the kind of financing we can provide, unfortunately. So at the same time, there's a place for angel investors. There's a place for investors who come in when the entity has been established, maybe has been running for 3-5 years and is a going concern. So there's a source of financing for, depending at which level your particular project or the particular agency is. So I wanted to make that clear, that it is always important that before you go out to look for financing, you should identify the level of growth of your business in order to go and access the right type of financing that you need. When it comes to our film financing, we've tried to go out of our way. You are right. When you go to a bank, you said they'll say security means give us your house. We have moved away from that type of security in this particular sector, and the reason being, it has to be self-liquidating within the validity and value of the project. So I'll just run through a few examples of some of the security that we take. So we take, for example, the assignment of future cash flows and receivables and rights under distribution contracts. So for example, the way it would work in supply chain financing, we take the risk of the off-taker. So if you have already found an off-taker of your project and they have given you maybe even an advance, we can take as security those future cash flows from the off-taker based on the off-taker's guarantee, as an example. So that is not your house. We can look at assignment of intellectual property rights itself. You can assign the intellectual property right itself. We can look at having charge over accounts, corporate guarantees. You spoke about guarantees. Most critical, I think, in Africa at the moment is the film completion guarantees as well. We can take security over those. And even in some cases, the personal guarantee of the promoter. I think that's why you are now talking about if you need to put a house. But what I wanted to show you is that we are trying to think out of the box. We are trying to be innovative in our approach to financing the sector, because we do understand, and you rightly pointed it out, that it is not like financing oil and gas or financing a company that does bottled water. It is a very unique sector. You are financing people's ideas. We need, though the sector is not as organized, we need to organize it. We need to find a way to create a market where it is clear, when I put in $10, I can get a return of 15. At the moment, a lot of investors would shy away because they think, if I put in $10, okay, we tell them that you need to have a slate of 100 films, then 10 will win. Then out of those 10, one will be able to pay what you spent for the 100. You know, much as that's the way the industry works, but we know that for an investor, that is very risky, a very risky proposition. But I think through dialogue like this, through platforms like this, we are getting closer to establishing a market. Regulators, banks like ourselves, the players like yourselves, the NGOs and so on, all coming together. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope your question has been answered.
Yeah. I go ahead. Thank you.
You have 30 seconds, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say that actually I'll tie this to what Temo has told us. And to get where we are today, I think it is important to build from those who've been there before. For us to be able to draft the statutes, we worked a lot with a document that was created in Shwane. We called it the Shwane Declaration when we met there at the African Film Summit. The Shwane Declaration, which was a declaration by the filmmakers, informed a lot on what is contained here. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because what we are discussing in terms of even funding, in terms of distribution, as we were establishing the Aacc, we also designed 5 programs. One was on production and funding. Another one was on capacity building. Another one was on centers of excellence, which are the ones that we proposed for the CCIs here. We had another one on yes. So what I'm saying here is that I think it is important for the sector and for the Secretariat, especially Angela, to kind of embrace the work that has been done before by filmmakers, because it informs a lot. There was a lot of engagement with the industry for us to even be able to design these programs. And I think that kind of engagement, even with the Flexim Bank, can help to look at areas and come up with that framework, because we had already actually come up with a framework for those. Remember 2017, we were in a workshop in Nairobi, and we came up even with a framework of how we can engage with financiers. So I think a lot of work has been done. There's no point of reinventing the wheel. It's, I think, for the Secretariat of the Aacc to kind of pick up this and help to engage with those who've already seen the potential in the industry, so that it makes it easier to reach almost every filmmaker, whether you are looking for $1 million or just for $20,000. I think everybody should be taken care of. And that, I think, is a way to engage with the financiers, and we need more of them to come on board. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Auntie Jane. Prof, do you still need that 30 seconds? I think you've all spoken extensively, and everybody has understood. And so I think we'll skip the 1 minute last points, unless it's very necessary, Prof. So please, ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so very much for your presentation. Do you want to do the group photo, and then we can go on to the next presentation? Could we please come for the group photo, please? Yes, please, Prof.
Okay, yes, let's line up for the group photo. A very big thank you to all those members there today. Did a good job. Of course, Vicencia and Jane and Ayeta and Jacob and Temwa, thank you all for a great job. Professor, is your professor name here? I think it is. I'm not. He has gone to it. Yeah, well done. So guys, I know your energies are low, or are they high? Please give them a round of applause. And thank you very much. Thank you very much. You've done a very good job, my good friend Ako. Do they call you Ako at home? Akofa, not Ako? No. Okay, Akofa. My mother used to call me Akos. Oh, nice, nice. And your business is Akofana. Thank you. All right, guys. Can I give you 15 minutes? We want to finish. Let me ask a question. I think we can do this very quickly. We would like to finish, because we're late, at exactly maybe 5:45, 6 o'clock. Is that okay? Are we good? So we can do our last session between now and we finish by 6 o'clock. Because right now the time is, what time is it by o'clock? It's 5. Yes, it's 5 o'clock. And I want to give you 15 minutes to get a drink, and we health break, whatever it is, and then we come back and we continue until 6. Is that fine? Are we agreed? You will not disappear. Okay, sawa. So 15 minutes health break, then we come back and do the final part, and that's the most important part. It's where we're supposed to come up with the breakdown. What do you call it? Yeah, with the framework. So please let us be part of that. We're going to be doing, we're looking at the consideration of the framework, draft the framework for the action of upscaling what we're doing here. All right. Bon appetit. 15 minutes. Let's be back here.
Good afternoon once again, ladies and gentlemen. To introduce myself again very quickly, my name is Libana Mayema. I am a South African Afro-cinephile. I just love African cinema and have been part of this process towards the establishment of the Aacc since the year 2003. If I may just begin by doing this, and I wonder if they're listening, can I ask that anybody that is under 30, can I ask you to stand up, please? If you are in the room and you are under 30, please stand up. Anybody that is under 30, please stand up. I'm going to ask and say to you, I was 30 years old. I'm closely heading to the 5th floor right now. When this process started, we beg for your patience, the youth of Africa. We beg for your commitment. We beg for your committed passion to these processes. When we started with this process in 2003, I met a young man then from Benin. There were no emails, just faxes, and he was walking around with a green piece of paper after it had been signed by the heads of state in Mozambique. It has taken us literally 20 years to get here. It has taken the concerted effort of the lady that I'm about to ask to join me on stage right now. And I'd like you to welcome her with a resounding applause for the effort that she has made to make sure that the dream of the Doyens of African cinema, the dream of Osman Semben, of Haile Gerima, of Safi Faye, is finally being launched today. So I please ask you to welcome onto the stage Madam Angela Martin from the African Union Commission. And with a slight change in the way that we are going to run this last session, because we have to adapt. We took a little too long with the other sessions, but the information that was shared was really important and informative. I'm going to ask Professor Dandaura to please join us on stage as we conclude for the day. Thank you, sir. And so, ladies and gentlemen, although the theme for this particular session is about a consideration for the draft framework on the upscaling of the audiovisual industries, I'm going to just summarize it and say that this session is about where to from now. When you appoint a CEO or a president is elected into office, or sometimes by force, they take force into office, you are even judged by your 100-day plan, the first 3 months in office. You are even judged by your first 3 years of your term, because the last 2 years you really should have already implemented. And so the question that I'm really going to say that we are going to be discussing in this last session is about where to from now. What are the practical modalities that we need to put in place for this dream to actually now be fully realized, and we end up with an institution that we can all be proud of called the Aacc. I'm going to begin by asking Madam Angela to say, there have been, I would say, 7 major areas that have been highlighted in our discussion today. The first and most primary one being research and data collection. And I think Prof gave examples of how Nigeria overtook South Africa. in terms of being the #1 economy by just research and data collection. So for me, I think that that is one of the most important points that as we develop this framework becomes a starting point. Then there's the issue that was mentioned around policy fragmentation. I think it's a big challenge that we face, and I think that the room would agree that the synergizing of policy on the continent is one of the other important things. The gentleman from Aacc Bank mentioned just the issue of IP management and how it makes it very difficult to implement or to invest in the industry because we have different IP regimes across the various regions. Skills development was the one. Then financing and funding. Access to markets on the continent and globally as the 5th one. And then the 6th and most important one, I think, is this one around innovation, around change and adapting to the changes in our industry. I'll conclude by saying when we started this process, we were shipping around 35 millimeter reels on the continent. We did not produce films on cell phones. For one film, you would need to ship at least 4 or 5 reels that weighed many kilograms. Right now, at the press of a button, you can tell AI to create a film for you. So this particular session must take into consideration exactly those changes, and it is your session as well, as Madam Angela will explain, in terms of how we will expect you to give us your feedback as well. So with all due respect, ma'am, and with gratitude for the work that you have done, I ask you to please lead us in discussing the framework for accelerating the audiovisual industries on the continent. Thank you.
Thank you, Lebone, for this introduction. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you so much for the summary that you have just presented, which will assist us in finalizing the framework of this stakeholders event. You will agree with me that we have had a very wonderful and intensive day, and I would like to start by requesting you to clap for yourselves and for all of us for the good work we did today. The framework is still in a draft format. Lebone has graciously given us some of the elements that we are going to put into the framework. But since we did not have time to finalize it, we would like to request that we have a small interactive session in which you are going to tell us what you want to see in the framework. The framework is your own document, which we are going to take to the member states of the African Union and to yourselves for implementation. So we are taking it to the ministerial meeting in May next year, and then from there it will be up for implementation by yourselves and the member states, and also by the African Audiovisual and Cinema Commission. So we decided not to read the draft that we already have, but to gather more inputs from yourselves for the framework. And after this exercise, tonight, we are going to send it by email for further inputs. We are going to give you a deadline of about 2 to 3 days to communicate further inputs, and then from there, we'll consider the framework as endorsed by yourselves to be presented to the ministerial meeting. With that, Lebone, I would like to request Professor to lead us in this interactive session that we are going to have very quickly so that we get more inputs into the draft we already have. I thank you.
All right, thank you, Angela, and of course, Labone, our code. I'm only here as a secretary. I will animate the process by inviting your contributions in the various areas. We have developed some in form of questions, but you might also want to suggest some more. The idea is the framework of action at the end of the day, should answer the question, what are the critical interventions needed to accelerate growth of this industry? That is our overarching goal. That's what the framework of action is supposed to address. And we're talking about pragmatic suggestions. It's not just another talk. So the first thing is to request you to confirm if some of these areas that Labone has read, the 7, research and data collection, policy interventions that are needed, skills development, financing and funding, access to markets, innovation, change, and adapting to changes on the continent. I don't know if you think these are the critical areas, or I should just read the questions we have. Because I think some of these issues of market, when you read the 2 documents we have presented, you might have some suggestions. So maybe we'll start with the first question. You have had the opportunity to at least review some of the content of the statute and also that of the plan of action on cultural and creative industries. Those are concluded documents. The question now is, by listening, are there some areas that come to you and you think that they should now begin to form part of our thought as we begin to ask and answer the question, what are the additional things we need to do? We are not changing those documents. They have been finalized. But are there gaps? I give you an example. We talked about AI, isn't it? Are we together? Yeah, so are there more areas you want to identify that we think that our instruments that are supporting the process of developing the industry need to capture? I pass it to you. Microphone. Are there areas you can identify like that? That you wanted to hear is contained in any of these 2 documents? Not there. We could start from there. Yes. Can we get the microphone? Okay. I will be writing.
Thank you very much. My name is Kimani Njogu. I'm based in Nairobi. I think that with the first area of research and data collection, obviously data collection is part of research, so maybe you might find a better way of framing it, whether it is research, and statistics or evaluation or whatever, but you'll find a better way of doing that. But I think there is one other area that we need to include, which is basically infrastructure. And I know that infrastructure may very well be covered in markets. I don't know if that's where it is. But because we are dealing with cinema also, a consideration of infrastructure may become necessary. And I think that may be something you might want to consider. Thanks.
Okay, I agree with you. One of the questions we have here is, what best practices are there to leverage in terms of funding, infrastructure, and distribution? So do you have best practices you're bringing from some member states or any country, for instance, that we can look at and see whether it will help us? Any best practice? Is it that we're tired? Yes, sir.
Je voudrais parler de l'exemple de la Chine. L'exemple de la Chine, vous voyez, vous les anglophones, vous vous imposez à nous les francophones. Je voudrais parler à partir de l'exemple de la Chine. Moi, j'ai fait l'université de film de Pékin. qu'est-ce que ça se passe dans cette université? C'est l'université qui a plus d'équipements dans toute la Chine. Et comment cette université a eu d'équipements? L'université a négocié avec le gouvernement et tout ce qu'il importe, c'est exonéré de taxes dans le domaine de l'équipement, de l'audiovisuel. Si bien que il a signé des accords avec des partenaires. Et ces partenaires, au lieu qu'il aille chercher l'équipement, il négocie avec l'université et c'est l'université qui va acheter l'équipement. Donc, avec ça, l'équipement reste à l'université, dans l'université. Mais comme il y a un accord avec le partenaire qui a participé, le partenaire, quand il veut prendre l'équipement, on lui donne un prix spécial. Donc nous pouvons utiliser ça parce que, par exemple, au Bénin, quand vous achetez l'équipement et on vous taxe, il y a la douane qui est là. Donc les gens ont des difficultés. L'équipement est cher déjà. La douane, ajouté à la douane, c'est cher. L'État, c'est cher. Donc les gens, malgré qu'ils ont la volonté, ils n'ont pas les moyens. Donc on peut utiliser cette politique-là pour voir si... Autre politique, moi je suis en train de faire quelque chose au Bénin qui n'a pas encore marché. Parce que c'est moi qui ai créé la formation cinéma et audiovisuel à l'université. Je suis en train de vouloir créer un partenariat avec l'agent de la télévision. Et il y a une université ISMA qui est privée. Et nous allons nous associer pour acheter des équipements et mutualiser ces équipements. Donc, pour la politique, pour faire l'équipement, pour avoir l'équipement, moi je pense que, et ça c'est l'État toujours, hein. Donc voilà les propositions que je pense qu'on peut exploiter. Par exemple, je voudrais finir pour l'intelligence artificielle. Quand nous parlons de l'intelligence artificielle, c'est les écoles de l'industrie culturelle créative, les universités qui sont les premières à utiliser ça. Donc moi, je voudrais qu'on forme les formateurs des formateurs. Parce que ce domaine évolue vite. Si nous ne formons pas des formateurs, et aussi des professionnels qui sont dans le domaine, si on ne forme pas des formateurs des formateurs, et nous pensons que chacun ira se faire former, non seulement on va perdre du temps, mais ce domaine va, la connaissance qu'on doit, ça serait digeste. Merci.
All right, thank you so much. So, very useful interventions. You have talked about incentive for us to have equipment. There should be some duty-free arrangement. You also talked about the need for us to train the trainers so that we can harness our opportunities in the domain of AI. You wanted to talk about partnership with a broadcast station. I didn't really get what kind of partnership you arrange.
Je prends le cas de la diffusion. Au Bénin, quand vous voulez, vous produisez votre film pour aller faire diffuser. Non seulement la télévision vous prend ça gratuitement, mais il veut que vous payez encore. Il ne donne rien, la télévision ne donne rien, mais elle veut que vous payez. Donc on peut signer un partenariat. Non seulement ils seront au niveau de la production, mais aussi au niveau de la diffusion.
Okay, I think what you mean is that we should strengthen our collection societies, because more and more countries have collection societies that are getting stronger. The other day, the collection society in Nigeria decided to fight all the hotels, that you cannot be showing Nigerian films and you don't pay us. And it went to the point of even picketing. You know, it was a big issue. They are negotiating now so that all hotels that are showing Nigerian movies will pay some money. They are also doing the same with the airlines that are playing Nigerian movies to pay. So I think that's the kind of thing you're talking about. You know, the sector is evolving. In those days, take music for instance. Musicians will follow broadcasters and beg them just to play their music so that people can listen to it. But what you're saying is the right thing, that we should begin to ask the stations to pay. There are countries that have started doing that. So what you're saying is we should sensitize stakeholders so that the collection societies can do their job. There are countries now that the DJs that play music also have to pay some form of contribution, which is collected not by government, by the collection societies, and it is flowed back into production. Is there any country like that? Anybody with that kind of example? Anybody with, let's learn, it's part of the best practices. And this is more in the area of education, so that as practitioners we know our rights and we can also use those existing frameworks.
So South Africa has SAMRO, which is our music rights royalties organization, and if anyone uses music they need to pay a fee to SAMRO. I don't know how it works completely, but I know that we do have something in place for that.
All right, thank you. Any other country example? Yes, please. It's good we know.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to make my contribution on infrastructure.
Okay.
What you addressed on infrastructure. And maybe there's something that which can be upscaled within the continent. Within the Kenyan context, we have the Kenya Film Commission, which has been mandated to set up incubation centers. And one of the projects they have set up is at Dedan Kimathi, that is Dekut. Because one thing that it's very easy to sustain those projects because the universities already have the capacity, they have the programs, they can teach, and then they can serve the community. So that when you want to spread that infrastructure and you do it within most of the universities, it's easy again to access. That is one way of also building up the capacity. So that you are looking at it, first of all, in terms of policy, the infrastructure, and then why can't we have also what I saw in medicine, what they call Abuja Declaration, where they say the budgets, especially for health, should be a certain percentage. Why can't you also have like a declaration within the creative economy? You start fighting so that now that the creative economy ministry, we are seeing it in most places, we can also try to look at affirmative action in terms of the budget in allocation, so that we have at least a way in which we can support the creative economic industry without necessarily banking alone on partnership, but there is also a deliberate attempt by the government. Thank you.
All right. The body in Kenya you talked about, what's the name?
Kenya Film?
How do you spell it? The one that sets up incubation centers. Did you get me, sir? What's the name?
Kenya Film Commission.
Kenya Film Pro. Okay. All right. Kenya Film Commission. All right. It's one of their duties to set up incubation centers. And I hear you talk about universities. Are you talking about centers of excellence? Because what you described was more when you talked about universities.
What I said, one of the projects they set up is in one of the universities. And they were trying to pick up some universities, which I thought it's a good practice that can be replicated because it's sustainable. Most of those universities have the programs, they have the capacity, and it can be economical in the process in serving those particular communities.
Yeah, I think it's the centers of excellence. Which Jane and her team had since given some thought to. So it's a good idea. I've noted that. Yes. Okay, after you will come to, yes, ma'am.
All right, so he slightly touched on something, matters budgets. And something that's been running through my head, and maybe this is a long shot, I don't know, I'll just say it either way. We in Kenya especially, we're currently redoing or remaking a lot of South African shows, okay? But if you do your research, you find that how much South Africa, what the budget was for the South Africa show in Kenya is totally different. So now, in lines of opening up, you know, the borders with you know, Aacc, is that something that probably could be a policy somewhere? That we probably have minimum rates for practicing filmmakers, because I don't understand why you know, as an example, a Ugandan would probably get paid 10 times less than a Kenyan to do the same thing that we're all doing. Film is universal. Film crosses borders. There's no actor who, you know, maybe if you're an A-list, for example, but then when it comes to payments, and could you have a unionized rate card? Yes, it starts with our own guilds, first of all, in the countries, but it doesn't really make sense to a lot of filmmakers in the country why a show would be valued at, you know, 1M in Nigeria and be valued at 500,000 shillings probably in Kenya. And it's happening with Netflix, something that's, you know, how much Netflix, for example, is paying, buying shows in Kenya or in the region, vis-a-vis how much they're paying for probably the same product in other markets.
Okay, I understand that this one actually is lies with the professionals themselves. You're talking about what guilds are supposed to do. It's not something anybody can give you. You must have the different sectors organizing themselves into guilds and setting standards, which might now include what kind of compensation they can get. Again, I'll go to the example of Nollywood. Sorry about that. They have guilds for directors, they have for actors, they have for producers. The attempt was to see that they regulate so that they can categorize the players and how much you should pay if you are doing XYZ kind of production. You see, there was a time the actors fixed a rate, and the producers decided to suspend them. This was like 6 years ago. Some of those very popular faces, we are not seeing them in new movies. It was a fight between the producers and the actors, because the actors sat and fixed their rate, and the producers said, we are the ones who made you, and so we will suspend you. So it's something that has to be negotiated amongst the professionals, and it takes time. There is very little that we can do to have it across the continent unless we have a union that has become so strong that it can actually set standards and the countries within can implement. So it starts from having those unions, as you call them, or guilds as it were, and then they can network and then have a standard. I don't know whether Aacc has that mandate.
Can I try and maybe provide further information on that, sir?
Huh?
I'd like to just provide further information on that.
Okay.
And say, one of the leading industry-led organizations that facilitated the creation of the Aacc is what is called the Pan-African Federation of Filmmakers. At some point, we were the largest and strongest federation made up of regional and national guilds and industry representative organizations. What becomes the problem is that the strength of that organization and its advocacy, its lobbying power has been reduced to almost zero, such that now the responsibility is being directed at the AU. It is not the responsibility of the Aacc to make sure that we standardize labor practices. When the American actors go on strike, they're able to be joined by other parties and to put the industry at a standstill for 6 months of no work. We cannot do that on the continent because our filmmakers are not part of guilds, are not part of national and regional organizations. So I would say that we need to look at ourselves as the film practitioners and the way that we participate in our national organizations. In South Africa, we have now the IPO, we have the Independent Black Filmmakers Organizations, and they have put to a standstill the process of the adoption of a new law to change IP in South Africa. But that is because the industry came together, and I think it's more on us than on the Aacc to implement those kinds of strategies.
Yeah, I have also, in the course of my work, seen that it's a major problem. Even when you talk about funding, you know, somebody said in the morning that Nollywood is a private sector thing. Yes, it started that way, but don't be deceived. Government also invested in training, and it is impacting the quality. There were initiatives here and there that because government saw it was succeeding, and they tried to key in along the line, particularly towards the tail end of Jonathan administration. And there are some investments that were done in that regard. Some of them actually got money and were able to go for internship, and some equally went for training in the different areas, and that of course impacted the work because they came back with some equipment. But there are situations where some banks in Nigeria decided to design interventions, not just for film, but for even theater. And you realize that there's a lot of acrimony within us. And of course, a businessman doesn't want to work in a sector where instead of it adding value to his brand, you have conflicts here and there. You know, we are always the worst critics of ourselves. And we are always the ones fighting ourselves. And so there's a lot of work that has to be done in-house amongst ourselves as filmmakers, as artists generally, so that we can begin to learn how to present a common front. And that way we will not scare even financial sector players that have decided to take the risk because they have seen more potentials in the risk. So we can encourage them to continue to play. But how do we achieve that is a big problem. Then you talked about affirmative action when you talk about budget. The plan of action actually provides for government to provide 5% of their national budget allocated to this culture sector. And the 2021, you remember, was, you can see it at the bottom there, the year of arts and culture. You know, so it is we again that should push for this. Our heads of governments have signed in. This document has been approved. So I think the affirmative action is for us to ask ourselves, how do we make our governments to give these things legs? There are many countries in Africa that their budget for this sector is not up to 1% of the sector. Do you agree with me? Who is to get them to do that? We have to do that, not just by making noise, but by demonstrating how it can work in our countries and how it has worked elsewhere. Yes, Auntie Jane.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention one best practice. And we had organized filmmakers from across Africa to come for them to tell us how they finance filmmakers. And they actually just go by script. And then what they have done is put a team together. It's a whole process. A process that ensures that at every stage there is some accountability and they've been able to fund many, many films. I don't know, Lebone, whether you know about that. And for me, I felt that this is from within Africa. This is an example we can borrow from, because I think a lot of times we look outside, but there are, you know, examples that are working within. And so if we have a development like that in South Africa, I know like in East Africa we have the East African Development Bank. I'm sure even in other regions we have this kind of banks, because a development bank is different from a commercial bank. There are some areas they would look into that a commercial bank will not. So I think that's an area that we should explore. And just this year I went to visit a commercial bank, and I asked them, why are you not looking into the film industry and see how you can fund? And what I was told is that if we have a framework in place, there is no reason that they cannot come in. But they are not willing to invest, you see, to be able to come up with this. So I think we can borrow from the bank in South Africa, because a few minutes ago, actually, Temwa told us there is a lot of money. An economist we worked with said there is a lot of money. But if you ask a filmmaker, starting with me, I have no access to that money. So if we can unlock, you know, different areas how a filmmaker or a content provider can access without having to mortgage your house, I think it will work for this industry in a very, very good way. Thank you.
Yeah, I will agree with you, because again, the intervention I was talking
And this is, I think, that is bankable. Because it's a productive business plan. A place we can train young people to produce film, and then we can say this is African production. But look, if you look from Morocco to Burkina Faso, there is many difference in the perception of film production. There is big difference from financing. Morocco is financing his film, South Africa is financing his film, Senegal is financing his film. It's not a question of big money. There is country who are really absent on the map of the film production because they are thinking that there is another priority. But from the independence, if you ask the government of Africa, they will tell you that the agriculture is the priority. And people still import onion and garlic from India. It's the same. I think that's the AACC have to fund an economic model as business plan, so how money can come, and I think there is money for training. This is really where we have to really to push. Thank you.
The last contribution, thank you, sir, will be from, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to say that to open up the market, I think that if the AACC can encourage our governments to have the film treaties across the member states, that will go a long way in helping, because once those treaties are made, then it's easier for co-productions to happen. A lot more of this cross-border synergy would be rampant, and then the markets will open, because if I, as a filmmaker, am making a film in Ghana, and I can put an actor from Kenya and from South Africa and from Zimbabwe, that's already 3 extra markets. I add Nigeria, that's 4. So you have 4 premieres. You can do it spontaneously or country after country. That gives you bigger markets, and that is going to help the continent in the long run. So the treaties are a very crucial part for our governments to make sure that it's done. So if the AACC can help with that, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. I think that's the end to the interventions. Do I summarize what I've taken, or I come back to you?
I think you can take a minute to summarize, sir, and then you can conclude.
Okay. Thank you so much. We have noted all that you have suggested. First, there is the issue of incentive for duty-free in terms of import of equipment, because this is a sector that depends on equipment, and that also has to do with having partnership with the producers of this equipment. There's also the issue of training of the trainers for AI and how we can harness the opportunities for the growth of this sector. There's the issue of centers of excellence in universities, the experiment by Kenya Film Commission in terms of incubation centers and the relationship they are now developing with universities. There's a need for us to note the 5% provision in the AU Plan of Action on Cultural and Creative Industries, and see how we can advocate for government to allocate 5% of their national budget to activities in the cultural sector. We also need to work on strengthening regional associations like the Pan-African Federation of Filmmakers, so that they can articulate some of these issues that have to do with welfare of practitioners and artists, so we can see if we eventually can have a template for payment or reward system across the continent. And then there is also the suggestion in the area of looking at those development banks and some special banks that we can actually educate them on how they can also take advantage of opportunities in sectors to advance their objectives, and that way they may invest, just like the experiment Antigen shared between the Development Bank in South Africa and Kenya. There is the idea of the makerspace best practice, where people who have the means can invest in equipment, and young people don't necessarily need to own equipment to be able to produce. So you have space, everything you need. All you have is to come with your idea. And that this will be helpful when there are good partnerships with producers. Most of these big producers, as in the case of Samsung that was highlighted. There's also the issue of IP bank or IP address, as the case may be. We will find out the actual name, but that is a major recommendation for Africa, a common one for Africa. Then there's the issue of the Aacc should design an economic model on how money can come to the industry across the countries, and that education is one area we can attract money. Then finally, there is the issue of film treaties that could be signed across member states. These are the key points I have noted. When we get back tonight, we'll sit with volunteers and see how we can organize them in the format of AU framework of action, and that is what I think the Secretariat will review and share with members. That is my suggestion.
Before you close your computer, sir, yes. I just have one last intervention to make. And I just want to give the example of the country that I know best, which is my home in South Africa. And to say that although 70% of all content that comes out of South Africa is financed primarily via government money, be it the Department of Trade and Industry via the incentives, or be it by the National Film and Video Foundation. On the other side, the 70% of the intellectual property is not owned by the filmmakers themselves. The reason for that is really that we allow our intellectual property to be owned by whoever it is that pays for that small piece of content. And I am advocating really to say that just like a soccer team is nothing without the soccer players, the Aacc needs the assistance of national organizations and should work very closely with organizations like the NFVF, like the Kenyan Film Commission, like the CNC in Senegal or in Mali, because they already have the information about the dynamics at their national levels. And instead of replicating the process of trying to source all of this information, I would urge that one of the first interventions that the Aacc does is to bring together the currently existing national statutory bodies together into a room with an intention to say, how do we encourage other member states to set up those organizations, because those organizations like the NFVF, like the National Film Commission in Kenya, are really important in accelerating the development of the industry. And for me, that would be my parting shot in terms of the intervention, sir.
Noted, sir. Thank you, sir. Can I close it now?
We can close, sir.
Okay.
And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I am not going to take the honor of thanking you for the participation. I think that that honor for closing off today, but also informing you about what will be happening tomorrow and inviting you to participate in tomorrow's activities belongs to none other than Madam Angela Martin herself and to our moderator. But I'd like to offer Madam Angela a word of closing for this particular session, if she has any.
Thank you, Lebone, and thank you to all of you for the contributions. I would like also to mention that the African Union has established the Pan-African Intellectual Property Organization. which is a specialized agency of the African Union based in Tunisia. But the kickoff of this organization is not happening fast because member states have to ratify the statute also of PIPO. We call it PIPO for short. And also the Continental Free Trade Area has been working on protocols and interventions on intellectual property rights. So I think together we can leverage on these initiatives and see how we can contribute to the intellectual property of filmmakers and audiovisual and cinema experts. With that, I thank you all for today, and we look forward for the launch tomorrow, and I pass it on to the MC. Thank you.
So please take your group photo. Take your group photo. Yes, because you've done a good job. And please give them a round of applause. Thank you very much, my brother Lebone. You're very passionate and you know your stuff very well. And of course, Professor's led us very well through. Professor Emmanuel Dandaura. Yeah, well done. I'm glad I got it. Yeah, please you can clap for me also. So my name is also very easy. You know what it is? Do you know Nikki?
Your name is Master of Ceremony.
Professor. So it's very easy. Nikki with a moi. Moi Nikki. Moi Nikki. Easy. Yeah, moi Nikki. Moi Nikki. You know, if I show you the spelling, you can't pronounce it. But it's easy, moi Nikki. Anyway, so I hope you've enjoyed yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. This is a step forward to the Africa we want. Right? Right? Turn to somebody and tell them this is a step towards the Africa we. Tell them. Tell them. Right, that's right. And for those of you that are watching back home, please take notes. We're going to give an email in the tributes down there, in the statements down there, so you can send your emails through, so that you can communicate with the Cisse and Angela and the entire team that are making this happen. Also, thank you to I think they're called E&M Group. Thank you, E&M Group, for taking us around the world. So you just smile at least and wave surely. Yeah. E&M Group. They made sure that we were around the whole world. People watching. People have been texting me from Australia and from Cameroon and Cote d'Ivoire and one other person from Netherlands. Oh, you must have signed a release form. Did you sign a release form? You didn't say. Oh my goodness, we're in trouble. We're going to get sued. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your indulgence. You were so patient. You stayed until this time. Tomorrow we start at 9 a.m. And we're expecting the CS. Now, CS for us is like a minister level, or what we call it's called cabinet secretary. So before we used to call them ministers, but now we decided to become American. You know, Kenya likes following America very much. So he's the cabinet secretaries, and we shall not be here because we're expecting more numbers. We shall be outside where you park, outside on the tent to my right in that direction. So you find a tent, a nice big white tent in a nice lawn, very beautiful lawn. Ladies with heels, you're advised that you might be making holes in the ground. So try and wear flats tomorrow, especially you, Habitata, because you're very tall. Habibata. All right. And then, yes, 9 a.m. at the tent. We are building the Africa we want. These are the levers that make it happen. Thank you very much, Angela, and the entire team from the AU and from KFC and everybody else involved, FEPASI. We had people from Aacc Bank. Thank you very much, Aacc Bank. You're one of our partners here. We really appreciate you. And, of course, the government of Kenya. God bless each and every one of you. Have a good night, good night's rest. If you are new in Nairobi, please ask me where to go tonight. Ask me, I'll show you. God bless you. See you tomorrow. Asanteni sana. Play some music, band.